All right, let's jump right into this explainer and trace what is honestly the ultimate 4,000-year historical game of telephone. We're going to look at how an ancient Mesopotamian god of milk completely transformed over millennia into something absolutely unrecognizable to the people who first worshipped him.
And to show you just how extreme this transformation is, take a listen to this line from John Milton's legendary 17th-century English epic poem, Paradise Lost. He writes of Tammuz, whose annual wound in Lebanon allured the Syrian damsels to lament his fate. So the big question here is, how exactly did an ancient Sumerian god of sheep end up as a literal demon in a 17th-century English epic poem?
Well, to figure this out, we're going to take a quick, chronological journey through 5 distinct eras: the first shepherd king, romance, betrayal, and underworld, the Tammuz transformation, the Greek Adonis, and finally, the dying god debate.
Starting off with Section 1, the first shepherd king.
Way back in ancient Sumer, before he was anything else, Dumuzid was simply a humble shepherd god. He was associated with the fertility of spring and the joy of date palms. But most importantly, he was believed to be the primary provider of seasonal milk. In ancient Sumer, milk was this rare, highly valued commodity because obviously it couldn't easily be stored without spoiling. So Dumuzid was this really positive figure of vital agricultural abundance.
And you can really see his early, lighthearted mythological role in this ancient story. It's essentially the ancient version of the dating game. The goddess Inanna has to choose a husband, and she's choosing between Enkidu, the farmer, who offers grain, beans, and crops, and our guy Dumuzid, the shepherd. Dumuzid actually wins her heart by arguing that his dairy, we're talking superior fresh milk and honey cheese, along with his wool, are just way better than mere grain.
Which brings us to Section 2. Romance, betrayal, and underworld. So that playful courtship takes a super dark, brutal turn. In the famous myth of Inanna's descent into the underworld, Inanna manages to escape the underworld, but she's pursued by a terrifying horde of Gala demons who insist someone else has to take her place. The demons methodically check her servants first, Ninshubur, Shara, and Lulal, but they spare all 3 of them because they're found properly grieving and mourning her death. But then they check on her husband, Dumuzid, and guess what? He is literally just chilling on her throne, lavishly clothed, being entertained by slave girls, completely unbothered by her disappearance. Displeased by his total lack of grief, Inanna coldly hands him over and the demons drag him down. After Dumuzid is dragged away, his sister Gishti Inanna weeps for him. Inanna eventually kind of regrets her harshness and decrees a compromise based on the magic number 6. Dumuzid will spend 6 months in the underworld and 6 months in heaven, while his sister stays in the underworld in his place for the remaining half of the year. Now, this 6-month cycle perfectly explained those devastating, scorching Mesopotamian summers. When the brutal heat killed off the vegetation, it was because Dumuzid was dead in the underworld. When spring returned, so did he. This was such a powerful explanation for the seasons that the idea literally spread like wildfire to neighboring empires. Let's look at Section 3, the Tammuz transformation. Looking at the timeline here, it is wild to see how this story adapts to fit new cultures as empires rise and fall. Around 3000 BC, we have the Sumerian Dumuzid, the shepherd. By 2000 BC, the Akkadians translate him into Tammuz. Fast forward to the 5th century BC, he flows into Greece as Adonis. And by 395 AD, right in the Christian era, the remnants of his myth are actually being mourned in Bethlehem. The deity is mutating every single step of the way. Let's zero in on that Akkadian era specifically. In the standard epic of Gilgamesh, the hero Gilgamesh literally rejects the goddess Ishtar, who is the Akkadian equivalent of Inanna, by calling out her toxic relationship history. He points out that she struck poor Tammuz, broke his wing, turned him into a bird, and decreed he should keep weeping year after year. So our happy provider of milk is now a tragic, broken bird.
Moving right along to Section 4, the Greek Adonis.
Just look at how much changes when the story hits the Mediterranean. The Canaanite title for Tammuz was Adon, which simply meant Lord, while the Greeks borrowed this word to create the name Adonis. His consort shifted from Ishtar to the Greek goddess Aphrodite, and the cause of his death? Totally rewritten. They swapped out underworld demons dragging him from a throne for a tragic hunting accident where he is gored by a wild boar.
And the way he was worshipped changed big time too. Greek women honored him with the Adonia festival in midsummer, essentially creating these ancient, tragic chia pets. They would plant miniature gardens in shallow pottery using quick-sprouting lettuce or fennel, right?
Then they'd place them on rooftops under the blazing summer sun. The plants would sprout fast, then quickly wither and die, at which point women would publicly mourn and lament the dead plants. It was all a symbol of his incredibly fleeting life.
By the time early Christians and later English poets encountered the remnants of these weeping rituals in the Middle East, the ancient provider of milk had been entirely recast. Women weeping for Tammuz are actually mentioned in the Hebrew book of Ezekiel. His name became the Arabic word for the month of July. And eventually, Western writers who read these texts just assumed he was a pagan idol, which is exactly what led to his portrayal as a literal demon in Milton's Paradise Lost. Which brings us to our final era, Section 5, the dying god debate. This is where we get a massive scholarly plot twist that completely flipped our understanding of history. For a really long time, modern anthropologists confidently assumed Dumuzid was a resurrected savior figure. They looked at the seasonal cycles, the weeping rituals, and thought, yep, we have it all figured out. But did he actually rise from the dead?
Back in 1890, Sir James George Fraser published this monumental study called The Golden Bough, where he categorized Tammuz as the prime archetype of the universal dying and rising god. The only problem? Based on the fragmented, incomplete clay tablets they had in the 19th century, scholars like Fraser were basically just filling in the blanks. They read about Ishtar going to the underworld and simply assumed the missing chunk of text was a triumphant resurrection.
But then, boom. Decades later, they finally unearthed and translated the completely unabridged tablets in the mid-20th century. And they proved the original Sumerian text didn't end with him conquering death at all. It just ended with his death. He merely swapped places with his sister in an internal hostage situation. The entire academic theory of him being a resurrected god was based on broken clay and assumption. Which leaves us with this final, kind of mind-bending thought. If a humble god of sheep and milk can mutate into an English demon, a broken bird, and a tragic Greek hunter over 4,000 years, what are future civilizations going to make of our modern stories? It really leaves you with a profound realization about how history is recorded, studied, and ultimately rewritten by the victors of time.